Spectre of Abandonment. As you all know, this exhibition is a conversation between artist Lorraine Clark, whose work you can see here, and three poets, a reciprocal conversation. And I'm going to start the performances with a piece that I've written in response to this artwork by Lorraine, which is called Left. In other words, and he shall set the sheep at his right hand and the goats at the left. Cack hand, dolly paw, cunny hand were tied behind the back, flog fists smacked, called lavus, scravus, gauche, clumsy, awkward, thick, sinister, sinistro, jacks, crooked, immoral, weak, vanster, venstre, link, deathly, perverted, sick, simul, semal, sting, dirty, female, bad, aswi, clies, the hand that wipes, grubby etymology smeared across a palm, tip to elbow. There's history in a limb, placed under glass, entombed in a gilt box, a phial of poison tucked beneath the fingers, chained at the wrist. See the lace glove framed in the lid, embroidered in gold thread, the word left. Thank you. And now I'm going to ask you to move to the left for Sue's piece, which is a response to family. Actually, you could stay. You could stay there.
So, Lorraine's piece is called Family, and the poem is called Family. And as I said yesterday, I really am starting to feel that they are family, and Lorraine said I'm actually starting to look like them, so I guess that would make sense. Family. Jawless but backboned, we cannot betray our Odyssean roots. Beyond millenniums and mass extinctions, spinal reminders deck our proud shoulders and inquisitive necks. The princesses of the tempest remain the peril of the ocean's plunderers. It's all Greek and Latin to us, as our Siren Amelia yields to terra firma. Do you think we have each other's hair? It is yours for sure, now ours for the keeping, accessorized by the purses of devils and mermaids, from which the sharks swam free, cold-blooded and soft cartilaged. Memories are transported between us, exoskeletons of barnacle and mollusk, the claws of those that walk sideways into your cooking pots, flotsam and jetsam, the wreckage of a pirate breed, the very bones of it. Clearing our vision through algal growth, still salted by the pillaged seas and reeking of bilge water, we silently debate the prospects, ours and yours, lovers. On land, the collecting of heirlooms is not disabled by single limbs. Meanwhile, you must plead for the mercy of the ocean. Having bricked yourself against her, she swills with your masonry, roars against the molecular mass of discarded plastic, converges on your anoxic estuaries. The shore offers bottle shards. We resurrect the messages within. As gems and snippets of string sequences haul us inland on a collector's trail of element, compound, alloy. A family's quest for root and seed, the organs and embryos of life itself. A progeny of 5, a dozen treasure bags apiece. Day 12 children, cyclic, versatile, strengthened by many and varied lives. We are heretics to your idolatry. Similar, but not the same. Taking the air through apertures, wearing the scars of injuries, our damages are justly repaired. There is no consequence of gender, race, or age, no rivalry of siblings, no cause of Oedipus or tears at night time, and our beds are dry come morning. Forgive us our nepotism, though we are not nuclear. As we stand spellbound, will you conjure up the apocalypse, and in defiance of natural law, relinquish this uncommon planet? The shoe stones have prophesied cancerous mutations, and we, in the spirit of our reptilian ancestors who lizard-hipped, gaze skyward, treading teeth for feathers. Though the ozone has gaped and faded us, will power our muscles and soar as a murder of white crows.
And now I really do have to ask you to move because we're going to go over into this corner over here. This piece is the piece that I'm going to read is called Kerenunos' Wife, and it was inspired by this piece of artwork by Green, which is called the tribal sense, that tribal sense itself. And being a bit of a pagan myself, quite a lot of my work is inspired by pagan and Celtic themes. Kerenunos, if you don't know, is the Lord of the Wildwood, the holy one. So, are you ready?
Okay, Agnes, a bit more volume.
Bit more volume.
Bit more volume.
Okay. So this is called Kerenunos' Wife. Holly branch, my right arm, wife of the Winter King, with his eyes of amber and onyx, speaking the language of hoarfrost and snowfall. Song stopped, the feasting wren is carried shoulder high on its funeral bier of ivy and mistletoe, silver sickled in moonlight. Stretched slow in December's perennial slumber, their roots are blind as adders underground. I close my eyes, remember Nuada Silverhand, waiting to reclaim his kingdom, to shake the world Ash Yggdrasil awake, its branches beribboned by snakes and plaited by tempests. His sisters, the Morigna, raven of battles, scorned crow of strife, sit at his side, stone still and silent as time, watch the shape-shifting shadows beyond the dark death door, arrows of loss fletched deep into their breathless heart. For love of me, the 7-tined stag, Kerenunos of the wildwood, bays into the lowering dusk. Fair among flowers, he calls me, his lady of the fallow moon, necklaced by birdwing and thornprick, shells and pebbles plucked from the sea's smooth handfast, the memory of water distant now, no more than a dream enmeshed in the fine-laced wires of capture around me, the bones of dead children huddled by my side. Oak tree my left arm, wife of the Summer King, with his eyes of jade and malachite, speaking the language of burgeoning branch and leaf, aproned in bramble and rosebay willow herb, the white dog rose climbs across my throat, its wildness etching my skin, a tattoo of growth, no hue.
Just a little bit of background to this poem, which I've written this poem in response to the fertility dolls here and there. And some years ago, when I didn't know Lorraine very well, but I was on holiday on the Dorset coast, and there she was on the Dorset coast collecting her materials, and you'll find that referenced at the beginning of the piece. Endless forms, most human. The story begins at the fringe of the tide, in a bright-eyed scavenge of debris and wreckage, the disparate fragments of what's left behind, where the trace and the waste that's torn and entwined, the legless and netted, crustaceans and shells, tendrils of weed and tattered feathers rest on the sand. Against the pale ground, down at the shoreline, crouching low, a figure sifts through the remains. The rings on her fingers ignite with the sea's shine. In the salty desiccation and the rotting down, the collector comes to take her harvest. She goes to the back streets of market towns, looking for signs of life in casts left for dead or for charity, selecting icons and remnants heavy with dust and memory and pale scent. Among her tomes, her categories and fabrics, her tools and implements, side by side on a broad table, she lays the washed relics. From the ruins of bead and bone and grizzled root, buttonweed, tap shoot and bladderwrack, snarled rope, plastics and fibres matted, her labour begins. With quick and able fingers, the artist twists and fiddles, stitching after snipping as she pierces and she fixes, building bulby babies of debris genetics, with strange body parts, forked limbs, and lung sap mimicry. We see the beginnings of digits, emerging features, hardly lidded, peering from a seed pod, an egghead, a stub mouth smudged, only just becoming a bud switched on. From detritus and spores of possibilities, assembled creatures dance into being, delivered from her hands into seamless anatomies, with the same left-right, front-back, upright morphology that's neatly human. Our familiars whisper through the night. I'm perfect form and ever so rosebud, padded and tucked into your image, blinking in perfection. Do you like my sing-song? I'm curled inside your inner ear, murmuring under your breath, feel my pelt. My pincers open and close, and my mouth's a stitched button. In between, there's a sparrow at my solar plexus, fluttering. I'm stored in a jar. Do you own me? I slide into your hollows while you're asleep to warm myself, then rush through your night, howling, lighting fires, leaving no evidence but damp sheets, salt on your skin. My pincers open and close, and and my mouth's a stitched button. I'm top-heavy, bend over at the waist, a doll in lace. Have me or put me down. I'm bored. I sit at your table, help myself from your plate and your children's plates. You invited me, but never address me. You never look at me. Look at me. I claw the floor of my cage, hungry, growing huge with desire. Can't you hear me scratch and pound? Can't you hear the door opening? Brooding at the bottom of your shaft, consuming your waste, I'm becoming poisoned. My spores rise like incubi to the surface. We ask in chorus, do you know us? Do you recognize our whispers shouting in the dark? Take off your mask and look through the gilded mirror. Yes, now you see us, right behind your eyes. Thank you.
And now we're going to move ever so slightly this way. Okay? Marvellous, thank you. As I was saying, this piece of work is based on two poems that I wrote as part of a 7-piece arc that collectively is called Merman, Stone Woman. And it's based on the fact that for centuries all over Britain and indeed in other parts of Europe, there have been widespread legends of mermen taking on human form to seduce human women, and of young women turned to stone for dancing on the Sabbath, and indeed fairy creatures interfering in the lives of humans. So the series of 7 poems combines some of those legends into a complete tale of love and enchantment. And the 2 pieces I'm going to read are the first piece, Merman, and the third piece, which is the young priest's cursing. So the first piece, Merman, goes like this. Naked, he walked from the ocean's ruffled hem, stumbled away from its low-hissing snake coil, from the rattling catechism of shoreline stones, left behind the whispering blur of riptide and seal bark, felt the hairs growing strong as kelp on his just-born calves and ankles, knew for the first time the shame of his nakedness, with the sun angry on his back and the bright yellow gorse scarring his surf-smoothened skin. Naked, he walked through the waist-high bracken, the wild indigo iris, crossed the gleaming mosaic of heather and heathland, past tin mine chimney stacks and slate quarry cataracts, past grandfather menhir, appliqued with black moss and heathen prayers, felt for the first time the ruined treasury of earth beneath his feet, the soft-bellied snail, the earthworm, beetle, nettle rasp and bramble root, gravel and brick, and with each step he took, the thought of her face grew stronger. Naked, he watched her dancing alone on midsummer morning, the sea's wild timpani her sole companion, dawn a crown in her flame-tangled hair, her limbs lithe as a dervish, whirling and spinning in pleasure, arms aloft, embracing daybreak, her bare legs rising and falling in tidal rhythm, her turquoise eyes fidgeting across the wave swell, magnetized to the curved horizon where he had swum unseen among the cascading breakers. And he knew even then that she would be the death of him. That's the first piece. And the second piece is the young priest's cursing. One lash for secrets, another for pride, 10 more for weakness, Christ's blood flowing, and one lash for sight of her, a wraith of flame dancing in the Sabbath daybreak, her limbs sea-encrusted, as if she had never known land, each lift of hand or leg a travesty breaching the pearl virgin dawn, embodiment of harlotry. Nothing holy in her glance, her eyes cleaving the mantle of prayer with which I protected myself, rendition of purity, white heat of corruption, a tormentor of souls, and one lash more for her eyes, another for torment. See how my skin splits and tears? How the undammed blood scarlets my winter skin, tattooing my fall from grace? I am witness to her decadence, otherworld witchcraft in her every gesture as I say her name out loud, each syllable rolling on my tongue like soft fruit. Dear God, forgive my body's release, imagining the unholy taste of her sweat upon my lips, the salt of her, as if she had risen, nubile and deft, straight from the ocean's shifting hold, reflecting all that stays veiled within me, mirroring darkness, and one lash more for imagining, another for memory. On that morning, watching her dance unheeding on the strand, her head thrown back in reckless pleasure, her throat a blessed communion, I became lost in the alchemy of her presence, corrupted and adrift. So I cursed her, an invocation of misfortune designed to free me from her body's deception. Stone curses hurled into the swelling Sabbath, each word a denial of hunger, a litany of damage that bruised her altering limbs, turning them black as slate, blight stiffened and unmoving, her eyes inert and pebble flat. I cursed her, my voice rolling and breaking as if it was hurricane-filled, and one lash more for both throat and breast, another for corruption. I watched her lose her humanity, turn to stone, her oyster green brilliance fading, her bright fire doused, mouth stitched into muteness, lichen and moss spores embossing her lips, her heart turned to granite, veins unbending as iron. And I stumbled over heather-clad moorland, away from the madness of enchantment, blind and faltering, to my chapel sanctuary, to the mute absolution of candles burning, the swaddled safety of prayers. I locked the chapel door hewn from driftwood and keel fragments, turned the ancient key in the ancient lock so that it snarled in outrage, knelt at God's altar, penitent and terror-struck, the spectre of abandonment beside me. And one lash for secrets, another for pride, 10 more for weakness, Christ's blood flowing, and one lash more for her eyes, one more for her throat and breast, one lash more for love of her, yes, one lash more. And with each lash given, I knew that she would bring the end of me. Thank you.
Which was originally a medieval cemetery in Southwark, put in place originally to bury prostitutes, who are known as the Winchester Geese, because for about 400 years the title of the Bishop of Winchester allowed prostitution to carry on that part of the South Bank in return for the rent from the brothels. And part of Crossbones has been revealed and has been preserved, and there are monthly vigils held there, which are very interesting. I've been to one, where people come to pay their respects and leave tokens, not just to the dead within, but to present-day prostitutes and disaffected members of society. So that poem then went on to inspire Lorraine's piece, which is Shrine to Pleasures. And once I've done the poem, I think we'll realise just how fantastically she's interpreted that. And the poem is called The Goose, the Ghost and the Man. The clink was my manor, where I still reside with the whores, the Winchester geese, the paupers, the dispossessed. In the still of a 21st century Sunday, to the rattling of trains, in the shadow of the Shard, it is as goose I rise. Not a bird fattened in the cloisters, destined for a Christmas plate. I am heroin chic, supermodel thin, as I slip through the red gates. I caress its ribbons, its poems, its tiny bears, a shrine to the working girls, homespun and trafficked. From my sisters of the past, to those who trade on the pavements of London, Birmingham, Nottingham, snuffed out, like the candles nestling in the weeds, they will burn again as the stones are turned to beating organs. I honk and glide over the rooftops, the narrow streets, no longer running with stinking waste, over the bishop's ruins whose coffers held the rent from the lodgings where I spread my legs, where people make a game at the of history at the Golden High gift shop, gloat at the gory prison where my mother fell to jail fever, over the cathedral where I whispered my unanswered prayers to St Mary Overy, over the market where I sold myself at Southwark Fair, the wharfs that knew mob rule, that rocked to music, pleasures of the flesh, now sterile boxes to seal the wealthy off. Hissing over the singing Thames, to the seats of government, law and finance, the old haunts of the father I never knew. I seek a certain type of gentleman. Enter the safe sleep of lawyer, judge, stockbroker, priest. In dreams they wrestle me in my room at the Anchor, their portly bodies enfolded in my wings, with a scratching in their groins. They awake perspiring on feather pillows beside their cold and tidy wives. Dress to face an innocent morning, soak me from their shiny skins. In hangman-tight ties, mildly harassed by the half-digested grass upon the stairs, they pause in doorways, prepare to stride their importance into the light. Before I launch, take flight to Crossbones, their feet embed themselves in my excrement. With a final twist of my elegant white neck, I rip through expensive shoe leather and peck at their adulterous heels. It's been suggested we take a short break before the final three pieces. Is everybody good with that? Yeah? Just 10 minutes maybe?
Yeah, 10 minutes
And then we'll have the
refreshment.
final three pieces.
Yeah.
Gives everyone a chance to go to the loo.